Alright, this is video 1 for my Centipede Final Sprint submission. I'm going to be talking about the general game elements that are present inside of the final submission, as well as a little bit of in-depth on the various critters. So looking first at the blaster, looking at the bullet, just as a simple constructor, just setting the sprite and the origin, as well as draw order and scale. Inside the update, it's just a simple position plus equals the impulse, just a constant movement upwards at any time. The position goes beyond the top of the window, we just mark for destroy, and then we have the simple collisions with the different critters. Looking at something like the mushroom, sort of similar constructor, just setting all the various resources. As well as collision, each mushroom has a health value which is set to 4, and then a normal health and a poison health update that sets the correct sprite anytime it's hurt, as well as grid delete and score functions for the mushrooms. This is the regen function for any time regen is called through the grid. Looking at the centipede, we have the centipede head as well as the centipede body, which just set the various textures to the head or body functions. The head has a spawn segment that takes in a length, just knowing how many bodies to spawn after it. Uses a link list between the full centipede for updates. The update just uses the FSM anytime this is inside of a current move, and then if not, then we'll call movement updates to get the next move. Or this is for your move, and this is for the body's move. The body's pretty much similar for the most part, grabbing a different sprite sheet. Initialize function for if you're the head or if you're not, or if you're the first. Different functions for getting previous and next inside the list, and a pretty similar update using the FSM. Inside the head, though, there is splitting within the death function that if you do have a next, you turn him into a head, or vice versa if you are the body. Where's body death? If you have a next, then you would call a head death, which controls the splitting. Looking at the scorpion inside the critters, Scorpion has a similar constructor, just setting the sprite resources and the origin of the sprite. Inside the initialize, the V2 is used to pick a random row within 15 and 14, or 15 and 19, sorry. The side is used just pick a random side, so if side 1, we'll get the right impulse movement, so we'll be spawning on the left, moving right. The set scales are just used to inverse the sprite so that it is always facing the proper way depending on the movement. The update count is just used to know how many frames until you reach next grid position, so that can vary, but it's set based on your speed and the constant step value. But anytime we reach a new grid position, we grab our new grid position and then check at that position. And then if there is a mushroom here, poison that mushroom, you'll tell that to the mushroom manager. So this only happens anytime you reach a new grid position. And then we have a death function that's used if the player shoots a scorpion, which has an explosion as well as a score report. And then delete is just used on all critters for a clear screen that does not involve any score updates. Inside the flea, pretty similar constructor with a different sprite. Initialize, it has a health of 2. It grabs the impulse of move down from the critter base class that just has various offsets that the critters use. Can spawn in column 0 all the way to 29, so any column within the grid. Register for collision uses the impulse, which is the move down, and then anytime the count or we have finished a move, just like Scorpion, grab the grid position and check that grid. If we are below the mushroom grid, we would destroy ourselves and update on that. And otherwise, if there is nothing there, there's a random chance to spawn a mushroom. The health update, anytime you get shot, if you go down to health 1, you're no longer active, so you cannot spawn a mushroom, and the speed increases by a multiple of 2. And then a similar delete function used to clear screen on the flea. Looking at the spider, the movement is a little bit different for the spider. Has a similar constructor, but yeah, so there's a random side generation and a random row, which determines the move state that you will get since the spider is using an FSM. So inside the update, we're just calling position update based off our move offsets from the FSM, and anytime we finish the count and we're at a new grid position, we update grid position. If we're outside the grid, mark for destroy, otherwise we will call get next state within our move position or move state. So go here, and inside these get next states, we'll be checking within the grid if there is a mushroom or a poison mushroom. There's a random chance to destroy that mushroom. Otherwise, if bottom row, will bounce up, or any of the other different circumstances you could be hitting. We have the spider score, which is just the sprite that is the 300, 600, and 900, which is set upon initialization. You'll get the value that determines what score value you are. Everything in the game is started through the game manager, which just upon spawning will initialize the managers, the wave manager, the player manager, and the score manager. When you start the menu, you would then call the menu initialize from the HUD, which will spawn the HUD. So in here, we'll roll through the different text values and spawn them on the screen. So this will spawn the relative player 1 text, player 2, the top score at the very top, and then the relative high score list, which uses the block glyph draw, which will block bullets and the centipede and will prevent mushrooms from spawning there. And as well, inside the game manager, we have the menu state as well as the one player state, which in the menu, if you press num1, you can launch into centipede 1 player, which will be the 1 player scene. And then when you're in the 1 player scene, you will run 1 player upon starting, which will start 1 player mode. In terms of high score, all of the score is handled by the score manager, who inside his header contains all the score values that are the command scores. He also has the default high score and high score initials, and the default list of high scores and list of player initials, which the HUD menu will use upon initializing. And then in terms of the wave system, upon initializing, Wave Manager will call the read wave data and read the wave data text file, and then set those values inside the critter managers. So if we launch this here, you can see all of these elements in action. So the game will launch into attractor mode, and the AI will bounce back and forth in a diagonal pattern. The attractor mode will always launch into the first wave, and then the AI can complete waves and move forward. And anytime you return to the attractor mode, it will be back at wave 1. But as you can see, the centipede will bounce off of the text, and then the player cannot shoot past the high score text. If you press 1, you can launch into one-player mode. The score will update at the top, as well as the lives you die. You can shoot the spider and see the score values print out, as well as see centipede scoring. And if you finish a wave, the next wave will then start. You'll see something like the scorpion spine and poison mushroom on that side of the screen. But if you die, we'll get a mushroom field region with the appropriate score. If you die 2 more times, oh yes, and then if the mushroom value drops low enough, the flea will then start to spawn until there are enough mushrooms inside the player area. If you die 1 more time, we can return to retractor mode. And since there were no damaged mushrooms, there was no field region. But we'll go back to retractor mode, and then with 1, we can launch back into player mode again. And each time we're switching between scenes. We'll see we're now back at wave 1. But if I hit return, I can force a game over and return to the retractor mode. And you can see that the score value at the top is always the previous score, returning to that scene. And then I'm going to come in here into Score Manager and modify these values just to get an easier high score to show high score saving. Game. Come in here with the new high score or the score values for the centipede death. a new high score value. So if I force the game over and return to the attractor mode, you'll see now that the top high score is represented by this high score, as well as being placed inside the high score list.